This video features highlights from a full drawing lesson, which can be found on patreon.com/School of Realist Art. There you will find extended lessons, multiple examples, reference photos, and other tutorials. Check out patreon.com/School of Realist Art. Now I have this photo reference in particular because it's easy to see the difference between the two light sources, right? So number one, this light source that I'm filling in right now is a lot stronger than the light source that's coming from our left-hand side. But also they're a different color. The light source here is warm. It's got a little bit of like a yellow tone to it. And the light source coming from the other side is bluer, it's cooler. And so I do that a lot in my photo references because if there are two light sources and they're kind of the same color, it makes it difficult to understand the form and to understand which way things are facing. My rule when dealing with two light sources is that you need to make one the main light source or the dominant light source, and then you need to downplay the other. So the reason is if you have two light sources that are competing, it can kind of like flatten out the drawing and make it not look round. So it's kind of like I want one to be treated a little bit less like a proper light and more like a reflected light. So if you go back to light logic, I've got lessons about light logic probably all over the place. Then, you want it to be a reflected light where anything on this side that's in the shadow stays darker than anything on the light side, which is where all this white is. So that's why we want to make that really bright. Make it nice and white, and then that way it gives us more value range in here to play with. So I notice, for example, when I'm looking at this arm, that the light is way brighter near the elbow, and then it gets a little bit less bright as we come up toward the deltoid. There's like the tiniest little bit of cast shadow down here, followed by a form shadow on this side. So it's kind of like what's happening is the paper is becoming the lightest light in our shadow side. So the paper is the reflected light. Or, if you want to still think about the two light sources instead of thinking about this light source as a reflected light, then you can consider that the gray paper is the cool light. As I'm getting over here to the arm, this is a really good example of the other part that's important here, and that is that pushing the value a little bit darker right where that form turns, so where we go from this light source to the other, can be really helpful in getting it to look round. So see how when I put this dark edge here, it just helps you get that feeling of the roundness so it doesn't feel quite so flat and we start to go over that hump there. And noticing also that gets darker down here. So it's kind of like edge of that turn. So it would be the core shadow in here. Gets really nice and dark. Then I can also just overlap the charcoal just a little bit. That way I can get the top of that light a little bit darker. This video features highlights from a full drawing lesson, which can be found on patreon.com/School of Realist Art. There you will find extended lessons, multiple examples, reference photos, and other tutorials. Check out patreon.com/School of Realist Art. Sometimes I just do a little bit of background shading like this, especially if I want to emphasize. And I can kind of shave that off a little bit there. Kind of makes sense to throw a little value in here too. Kind of getting me to enjoy this, or I like the look of it. I think that light just looks nice and shiny and like eye-catching.